What's up, YouTube? It's been a long time I've seen you guys, so hopefully everybody's doing all right. I know a lot of you guys from last year, which is this year because the SHSAT had a lot of problems. Welcome. I'm Greg from GregsTutoringNYC. Hopefully everybody's doing all right, enjoying your summer. It's not too hot here in New York City, although it's hot enough. It's a good time to be doing your review stuff on your material for the SHSAT, which I call the SHSAT. And I'm a tutor for that. I know a lot about it. So what I'm going to do today is do a little quick walkthrough of the handbook, compare it to some past years' handbooks, and talk about some errata items. Please like and subscribe. This channel takes a lot of my energy. I haven't been doing it for the past few weeks, but I'm going to bump up my game pretty much from this point onward. So it'll be something we're going to just dynamically go back and forth as I always have. I'm going to eventually review this from cover to cover. So you'll have that. I already have some reviews I already done that are on my website. I can bring links to those at some point for you guys. So far, the registration for the SHSAT is unknown. The DOE, the New York City Department of Education, the DOE has not yet said when the test is going to be. For anybody who followed this / lived through this last year, it was quite a chore and quite a burden. Let me just make sure we're live. Okay, we're good. Due to the pandemic and New York City politics between the chancellor left, de Blasio had various issues that were contending back and forth and things like that. And the SHSAT is normally held starting around Halloween time, late October through a few weeks through November. Turned out last year that a couple of weeks before it was announced that it was not happening, and it turns out the DOE didn't even set it up. So there was a long period where kids were prepping and so on, and the test wasn't even going to be happening at that point. So between this and that and hemming and hawing and politics and other stuff, the test finally happened in late January and the first few weeks of February. So that's pretty much a window, I think, again this year. The pandemic subsided, but it's starting to heat back up again. So who knows what's going to happen. In the meantime, the mayor is going to be, this is his last few months. He's going to be out in January. We're going to have a new mayor. There's still New York City politics on top of it. We got a new chancellor for 2 months. So that person is going to be of limited use because the current candidates are saying they're not going to use that person. So we have a lot of dynamics going around here. There was really never any good reason I understood why the SHSAT had to happen in October. On the same note, having in January, February, I think is helpful for a few reasons. So even though we're creatures of habit, it's worth entertaining that it might be in January and February again this year. And that's not too bad a deal. The only bad deal is that if you're prepping now thinking it's around Halloween time, you got to psych yourself to keep going for another 3 or 4 months on top of that. So this is about pacing and other things too. And as I always said, the SHSAT, as much as it's about math and ELA, because that's the main 2 sections, it's also about psychological. Have problems with adversity and being diligent and stuff like that. And that's part of what this test is about, is to sustain yourself when you finally get into a specialized high school. That's what's going on there. So with that in mind, registration is not opened. Nobody has a single idea about it, at least in the general public. I haven't even heard rumors. I get to hear a lot of rumors that turn out to be true and many more that turn out to be false. In this case, I've actually heard none. Certainly none that is even worth giving any credibility to. So here we kind of are. It's a good time to prep because it's the summer, a lot of you out of school, and the pandemic on top of it. So that's the best you got to do. So what we're going to do is talk about the handbook a little bit. I see a bunch of people in the lobby there. Please like, please subscribe to the channel. I have hundreds of videos already about the SHSAT, including cover-to-cover walkthroughs, question and answer series, certain topics on something. I also have a series I call the hardest math problems. I've done from grade 3 to grade 6 so far. I'm going to start adding in grade 7 and grade 8 as well. They're going to probably be 20, 30 parts altogether when all that's added up. Certainly 10 parts. Like the grade 6 was in 5 parts. And what I'm doing is taking some of the hardest problems from the New York State tests and using those as kind of exemplars to segue into the SHSAT examples. Now they're different, but they're still there. In fact, let me give you guys a link to my site. Let me see. This might be the best link to give you. Let's see here. One second while I find that. Yeah, this one here is probably good. So this will be a link to many of my videos on YouTube, and I've broken them down on various things. One thing is going to point you to introductory ELA stuff. Another thing is going to point you to SHSAT 9 material. Another is going to point you to handbook reviews and things like that. So with that in mind, why don't we just jump into here a little bit. What we're going to do is start out by looking at, first of all, how to even get the handbook. So the first thing you're going to do is to go to schools.nyc.gov, and I'll throw that into the chat as well. And once you get there, let me bring up my tab here. You're going to click on this enrollment here. It's going to drop down. You're going to go to enroll grade by grade. Okay, and then you can scroll down there a little bit. Okay, and you're going to see specialized high schools. You're going to click on that. So that's the page you want to be going to look for current events and all these kind of things about that pertaining to high school enrollment, but in particular about specialized high school enrollment. And again, registration has not yet opened. That normally doesn't start till at least the first day of school, and normally 2 or 3 weeks into it. Okay, and then there's a couple of weeks where you can register. So there's no sense of urgency here about registration, even if it turns out that the SHSAT is around Halloween time. Okay, so as long as you're aware that you need to check it. Anyway, this is the link where you end up wanting to be. So let me pop that also in the chat. Of course, you can bookmark it and go straight to it if you want to. Okay, so on this page, you're going to scroll down a little bit. There's various things that are happening. This is about offers for this current year. It talks about LaGuardia, because that's also a specialized high school that takes performing arts. So you go to do an audition. And then there's various information about stuff about this different things. So what you want to do is scroll down to where it says the 2021-2022 school year SHSAT practice testing material. And if you click on that, it's going to drop down. It's going to give some very light information, including other links about what's on the test and so on, how to plan. And then there's this practice test sections. So the handbook comes with 2 sample practice tests, as well as grade 9 questions, extra gridding questions, and then the answers. Okay, normally when they post this, it's all together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a link to my site, because they posted this all together on this exact link I gave you, and for some reason they backed off of the whole entity, if you will. I don't know why they're only posting it in pieces right now. So if you go to my site, and I'll click over there, I just put the link in there. But if you go here to SHSAT handbooks and GregsTutoringNYC.com, and I just put the link in there. If you come down to this year's handbooks right here, Okay, if you click on this, you're going to get a link to a handbook all together, all in one piece, all in one giant PDF, versus this one here, which it has it split into pieces. Okay, so it's up to you which way you want to do this. But this has everything, and those other 5 or 6 links is all right here, so you can download that. And then what we're going to talk about today is this second document I have here on this line. I said it's still forthcoming, but I just before I started this up, I added it. So there's now an errata I have that I produced. I went through this weekend. I went through the whole handbook, all right, and tried to find any errors. I read every page. I solved every question. I read every passage, and I looked at every explanation they gave. And there's a couple problems. 1 or 2 are not as bad as past years, and 1 or 2 are pretty serious. Okay, so let's just back off of that then, and come back in here to see where we're going. Again, I see a few people in the lobby here. Please join. Please subscribe. If you have any questions, please ask. If you're catching this on the replay, guys, please also like and subscribe. There's more info coming. This is for you guys as well. All right. All right. So let me try to get this showing the proper thing here. All right. So this is the actual handbook, the whole thing together. So what's true is, even if we go to the page over here, these split up parts, in other words, if I click on grid and samples right here, it's not going to bring me to page number 1. Like this starts at page 249. The grid and samples here, because it was part of the larger document, okay? All right, so when I give page numbers on the things we're going to talk about right now, that's what we're talking about. So first of all, let me just kind of back off. The handbook as a whole is kind of following the pattern that happened over the past few years. So since 2007, when they added the revising and editing grammar sections and took out the scrambled paragraph and the other logical section, they replaced it with the grammar and editing sections. So once they did that, it kind of had a new dynamic to it. And basically, for the most part, the math examples in the handbook has kind of gotten easier, whereas the whole ELA section, including the reading comprehension as well, has kind of gotten harder, okay? And it's worth pointing out that this handbook is a combination of questions from the previous 2 or 3 handbooks, okay? It's not just taking like the 2019 Form B and sticking it in here totally. It's not, it's maybe 75% they did that, and then they cherry picked out some examples in other places. So if you did past SHSAT handbooks, you've probably done most of the questions that are in this Form A and the Form B from this handbook. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is, if you did that, it was probably a year ago. And what I like about this handbook is kind of the combination that they put them in. Okay, I don't know if they purposely put in them, consciously did it in some way, or it just haphazardly happened. But I kind of like the way this one came out. The ELA is fairly challenging, I think, and the math could be more challenging. And with that note, remember that the handbook is not what's going to happen on test day. It's only a representational guide with some examples to give you some sense of what's actually going to be on your test day, okay? It doesn't include every single topic. There's a lot of people who follow the handbook to the T, like, oh, it has 4 exponent problems, and the overall test did be 4 exponent problems. And it didn't include proportions at all. You can't do that. You can't do that, all right? Okay, wait 1 second. I got a text. Let me clear that. Hello. How's everybody out there doing? If anybody wants to ask questions, please ask as I'm talking. If it's not your question's not exactly about what I'm talking about at the moment, I can address it at the end, okay? I really enjoy interacting with you guys and things like that, okay? So again, this handbook incorporates examples and passages and questions from the past 2 or 3 years in different orders, and I like the way it's kind of laid out, and it's not really breaking anything off from what has happened in the past 2 or 3 years worth of handbooks. And on that note, let me give you the link to my handbooks. Because I have the past 12 years or so of handbooks here. And the errata we're going to talk about right now, I'll put a link to that. I'll put that, I didn't put it in the description yet because I just made the last finished modification to it before I started this live stream. But I'll put the link to the errata that I'm talking about right now, which has three or four. So in past years, especially like when I did last year's errata, there was a lot of problems with the handbook. Okay, a lot of it dealt with formatting, but some was actually errors in the explanations, and a few of the answer choices were wrong too here. So in this year's SHSAT handbook, that's very much less so. It's pretty clean. Okay, so with that in mind, why don't I actually just jump into some of this? Two points before I do that. So in past years, the handbook broke down how many questions were in each section. For instance, the math normally has 5 grid-ins, right? There's 57 questions per section. The math normally has 5 grid-ins and 52 multiple choice. The revising and editing, A and B, and the reading comprehension, they would not give exact numbers for that, even though there was 57 questions in total. But they used to say like there's 1 to 9 revising and editing questions, and like 36 to 45 reading comprehension questions. This year they left the count off completely for the ELA. Okay, I'm not sure why they did that. So they don't mention how it's broken down at all. Now, I personally thought last year that they were going to add more grammar sections into the exam on test day. And then the pandemic happened, and I think they backed off of that. Okay, so I don't know why they didn't add to the handbook how many questions are in each section, really. Okay, the other thing they left out of this handbook is the field questions. So out of every section is 57 questions, only 47 of the questions count. Okay, and they always made it clear that there were 10 field questions, and they weren't going to tell you which of the 10 were the field questions. Okay, this year they left that out completely. Field questions, experimental questions, they're never even discussed. So I don't know if there's no more field questions at all, or it's an oversight. It's hard for me to believe it's an oversight because somebody had to explicitly take, I mean, this has been in the document for a decade now. So for somebody to explicitly remove that line, and it was in more than one place in previous years. So for somebody to remove a reference to field questions means maybe there's no more field questions. So maybe I'm jumping out of shadows. Maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill here. I don't know. I don't know. It's just they don't say it. So that's something on the table that you may want to be concerned about, that this year maybe they're going to count every single question. We don't know. I think they're going to have to explain that at some point. Or because they don't have the full handbook for this year online anymore, they might revise it and add the top part back in. Because when you go to this page here, let me bring that back up for a second. When you come here, in other words, where it says sample A, there's text before that I showed you in the big link, the link that has everything in it. There's 20, 30, 40 pages before sample A that they're not including on the current thing here. At least how many practice tests should we take before the test? This depends on the quality of the student. When I tutor my kids, I rarely do more than a dozen and usually do about 6. Now, some of you are saying that's impossible. Well, that's how I do it. I know some of you guys are taking 20, 30, 40 practice tests. I know people who have taken over 100 practice tests. Personally, I think that's absurd and ridiculous. You're not test factories. If you need to take that many practice tests, it means you don't know the concepts and topics, and you're trying to throw darts against the wall randomly to see which ones hit just by doing more and more problems. And that's not the way to solve these things. This is about critical thinking and logic. It's not making you into problem factories. Okay? So I've even had students I've done as few as only 2 exams with them. And it doesn't mean they have to be geniuses. So what you want to do is basically, depending on when the test actually is pace it out, okay? And when you do a practice test, you don't just zoom through the answers, right? There's 114 questions. You don't just go yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Oh, I got 3 wrong and my score is whatever. Okay, that's not learning from the process. What you need to do is score it, see which ones you got wrong, read why you got them wrong, read the explanations. Don't zoom through the explanation. A lot of kids will read it and go, oh yeah, of course, and go on to the next question and never really absorb why they got something wrong. On the same note, what you want to go, when you go through the test, you also want to investigate why you got a question right. First of all, a lot of you are guessing. Some of you are like, I think it's choice A. I'm like 95% sure, or I'm 75% sure. But that means you haven't mastered the ELA and you haven't mastered the English, because you need to be 100% sure. So what you even have to do is, even when you get a question right, even when you're convinced you're 100% right, you still want to stop. You still want to investigate what's going on there and learn from it. And you want to document some of this. When you start out, you're going to write a list of topics you don't know anything about. And you're going to do another column with topics you think you know something about. And as you do practice tests, you're going to increment and iterate yourself along to try to see really where you are, where you're at. If there's you keep making exponent errors or fraction errors, then you need to go back and review those topics. Not do 10 more questions. You need to go back and learn exponents and go back and learn fractions, proportions, ratios, percents, whatever it is, right? Because this is varied up. When you split it in half, you have 2 top level things. You have math and English. Okay? Within math, there's 100 topics. There's fractions, there's there could be polynomials. There's functions, there's input-output tables, there's percents, there's division, there's PEMDAS, order of operation, all this kind of stuff like this. On the ELA, a lot of you think that's just the giant blob based on a passage, but it's not. There's also 100 ELA topics, okay? So what you have is 200 topics and 114 questions. And then within each topic, there could be extra questions. For instance, if we talk about exponents, is the question going to be about exponent multiplication? Or 2 exponents that you add together? Or an exponent times something that's not exponent? Right? It can get very complicated. Or an exponent involving a base where the exponent is a fraction? So it turns out that within the topics, there's subtopics. And then with each subtopic, right, there's not just one exponent multiplication question they could ask you. There's probably 100 exponent multiplication questions they can ask you. And within each 100 of those, they can give it a little tweak. Just a tiny little tweak, right? So it turns out there's literally thousands of questions they can end up asking you. So it's not even so much, can you get 100% on the 114 questions they give you? It's, do you know the concept underneath it? Do you know what the topic is about? So that's what you want to do between you doing your practice tests. Okay? Your practice test is basically your assessment. And between that, you should be studying. Prepping doesn't mean to do 100 more questions. Yes, you need the practice. You actually do need to do the questions, because there's test-taking skills. You have to learn how to pace, a whole bunch of other aspects involved, including psychological things, where you have to get there, right? So I would just say pace it out. If you've done 4 already, just to use your count here as a line in the sand for everybody, you've done actually considerable already. You've already done 560 questions or whatever, 280. Yeah, you've done 560 questions or so on. give it 550 questions. That's a lot of questions. You should now have a good sense of where you are. In fact, I have, let me post another link here. I have an 8-week study guide for you guys to consider. So let me plop some of that down here on the link as well. This is about, I recall, probably about a half an hour YouTube, where I kind of lay out an 8-week study plan. It could be longer than 8 weeks. It could be shorter. And here's a PDF to go along with it as well. We're kind of talking about how to plan out how you break down your progression, whatever your timeline is. So if the test is in October, you have August, September, October. So you have 3 months. So that's 12 weeks. Okay, this plan I just put up there, it should work in 12 weeks. So let's say it's not in then, but it might be in January. So you have August, September, October, November, December, January. Then you have 5 months, so you can expand it out, right? Because you want to balance this against just relaxing. You want to balance this against family activities. You want to balance this against maybe any teams you're in or events that you do, or just your interest. It could be playing games online, joining a Discord, whatever you guys end up doing. You need to balance this in. And of course, in September, when school starts again, if you have free time now, and you might not, but if you do, you want to balance it against that. So in this last link I just gave, I have a really pretty long discussion of not only how to break down the 8 weeks, if it turns out to be 8 weeks, but really what you want to be how you want to be approaching this and so on, which ties back into the question, how many should we do? You know, if you're normally like a 95 and above student, you're probably going to end up taking less practice tests than a student who's only like currently a 75% student. Talking about your report card information. And that varies from school to school too. A lot of middle schools suck. They just plain out suck. So if you're in a sucky middle school, you don't know a lot of the material. You're going to have to work harder, which probably means you're going to be more prepping, more studying, and probably more practice tests as well. Okay, so let's go back to this and let's actually look at some of the problems with the handbook. Okay, so the first problem is page 88. So let me try to find that. And this is not a big deal problem. That's 87. Oh, cool. I got there right there. So if you notice, for instance, on page 87 here, it's just has 87 at the bottom. It's continuing to the next page. On 84, there's a double footer at the bottom. So we have this problem right there, where it's showing us page 88 and 54 at the same time. So this doesn't really affect anybody, but it's sloppy. It leads me to believe, what the heck? Like, how did they manage that to make that kind of error? Okay, and this happened in past years as well. So there's some sort of whatever formatting software or whatever they're doing to produce the PDF for the handbook. There's some problem with it. Okay, the second problem is on page 232. So let me try to flip into that. Let's see, that's 166. And while I'm doing this, again, I'm Greg from GregsTutoringNYC at gmail.com. Please join and subscribe to the channel. I have tons more material coming, with already tons more material on the channel. Give this 1 second to focus. That's 228. I'm a tutor, so if you guys need help, I'm your guy. Don't hesitate to email me, GregsTutoringNYC@gmail.com, including if you've run into a problem that you don't know how to solve. I will help you with that. Do not come to me with 20 and 30 problems. I will not do that, because then it means you need to hire me as a tutor. Okay? That's to be fair. But I do answer hundreds of you guys' questions, and I'm more than happy to do that more. My other condition for answering questions is that if I take the time to answer you, please take the time to respond back to me. There's some of you guys I take 15, 20 minutes to answer, and it's not until 2 or 3 weeks later, after I'm like, did you get my answer? Did you get my answer? That you're like, oh, I forgot I asked you a question. So that's not really fair to me, guys, right? So this is page 232 here. I went too far. Give me 1 second. Okay, question number 72. So there's an error in the explanation where it says it's justifying the answer here. And the justification is because you can't purchase an egg, half an egg. And that's a bad justification, because the answer is in dozens. So this has nothing to do with purchasing half an egg. It has to do with purchasing half a dozen eggs. So this is just, I don't understand what they're doing here. The good news is the answer for 72 is still F. But this is just somebody being super sloppy, and hopefully something like this doesn't happen on test day, which concerns me because I don't know how this test is vetted. Okay? If we go to now page 237, and again, that document I posted here that says this one here, about 6 lines up, it has PDF/handbook/whatever errata. That is the link to the document I'm looking at right now, and I will put that into the description of this live stream. In fact, I should probably really do that right now. Give me 1 second, guys. I will do that. This way, anybody joining it can see that there. Okay, it should now be in the description. Okay, so where were we? Going to page 237. Okay, this kind of has a similar kind of error. Page 237, question number 93. This one's not too big a deal, but they put they put a decimal point here and not a comma. Okay, so again, not a big deal. The answer is still D. There's no error there. So that was Form B. So now if you go to the grade 9 things, if we go to now page 247, so now we're in the grade 9 questions and the answer part actually. 247, question number 10. Okay, so where is that? Okay, so again, there's an error here. This 10 right here, whoops. This 10 should have also said 10 to the 4th. Okay, so the answer is still F and everything else is correct, except the denominator should have been 10 to the 4th. Okay, and then there's one last problem on 252, which is actually a doozy. It's the most severe error here. Okay, it turns out everything right here is wrong. Okay, so that means the answer is wrong as well. Okay, the answer here is not -2. The answer here is 3.5. Minus 3.5. Okay. If you go back to the question, it said it was from point P to R or whatever. I don't have it right in front of me. Yeah, it's 1/3 of the way from point P to point R. So instead of going 1/3 of the way from point P, they went 1/3 before point R. Okay, so somebody might argue this is a question of interpretation. I don't believe it is. It's clearly wrong to me. Okay, and if there's two alternate solutions, then the question's ambiguous, so it's still wrong. But if I said I left my house and I went to the candy store, and I said the candy store was 3 miles away, right? And I said I walked 1/3 of the way there. I think I walked a mile, and I still have 2 more miles to walk. Okay, I wouldn't say I'm a mile away from the candy store if I only walked 1/3 of the way there. So that's the problem with this number 4 here. So this one is completely erroneous, okay? And that turns out to be the last one I have. So again, this year's handbook here was pretty clean, and that's really the issues on the table. Okay, so again, I see a few people in the lobby. If anybody has questions about the handbook, about the SAT in general, please go for it. All right. And like I said, I'm going to be doing more live streams about the SHSAT. I'm going to continue my series about hard math problems. I already did grade 3 to grade 6. I'm going to start up grade 7 soon enough. And at some point, I'm going to go over all the questions in this handbook. I've already reviewed handbooks, two past handbooks. I gave the link to that before, okay? And I have a whole bunch of links that you can look at. Again, if you go to the fact page I gave earlier, give me 1 second. I'll actually go there myself. One second, guys. Got to get the streaming software pointed to the right place. So if you go to GregsTutoring.com/SHSAT-FACS, and I gave the link to that earlier, you're going to come to this page where I have a whole bunch of resources of various things. First of all, I have this blurb talking about my tutoring and what the specialized high school is about and what the SHSAT in general is about. And then I move into a lot of the past links I have. The first one is about math topics. What topics are on the SHSAT, both the grade 8 and grade 9. ELA topics, the same kind of thing, especially what I call my starter kit. Things like main idea are essential. I have some videos about poetry and a whole bunch of other stuff. This is about an overview of the math formulas that you guys need to know. This is an overview of the geometry formulas you need to know. This is a review of I used an example from the handbook and made like 10 variations of it. So I ripped that to shreds on there. This is the 8-week study guide I pointed out earlier. This is the hottest math problems I was talking about before too. So then I have this broken down in various ways as well. For instance, I have a whole bunch of videos just about the SHSAT 9. Okay, so you can get to there. I've done literally every example in multiple handbooks that you can get through the GregsTutoringNYC.com/SHSAT review. I did a problem of the day, so there's maybe 50 or 60 questions, extra math questions there that are SHSAT level and SHSAT style that you guys should give a shot at. They're based on videos I did. There's also a PDF for every single one at this link, this POTD, problem of the day, that you can look at to find out what the answer is. And I will continue that at some point as well. These are previous SHSAT handbooks. So there's about 12 of them, which encompasses then about, because each handbook has 2 practice tests, so about 24 practice tests. Just like this year's though, some of them are repetitive. So there's not exactly 24 full tests, but there's a dozen and a half minimum. Okay, I never really counted. This is the link to the top level of my YouTube channel. This is about what to bring with you on test day itself. This is about when you're freaking out, what to do. And this pertains to the Discovery program. There's a link to that, and there's a whole bunch of details I offer to that. So there you go, guys. All right, let me go back to here to see if anybody has any other questions. There's a bunch of people in the lobby. Please like, please subscribe. Anybody have any questions? Okay. And again, this was at GregsTutoringNYC.com/SHSAT-FACS, SHSAT-FAQS. I gave a link earlier. Okay. Nobody has any questions? I'll just chill here for a minute. If not, I'll bid everybody a farewell. Just as a side comment about the SHSAT handbooks, use third-party material first. As much as a problem there may be with the DOE handbooks, they are official. Again, as I said earlier, they are not the end of the world. They don't discuss every problem, all those kind of things like that. However, it's something that you should be looking at. Do them last. Okay, if you have third-party material, you should be looking at that first. Some of you have Princeton Review, Barron's, Kaplan, etc. Do those first, and then do all the handbooks last, just because they're official, okay? And you kind of want to have that spirit moving forward. Now, some of the third-party material, even though I just mentioned some names, some of it's not as good as the others. But there's an unfortunate truism with the SHSAT, which is that even though it might get a lot of kind of attention in New York City, it's only a New York City test. There's at most, I think, 75,000 8th graders. So we're not talking about massive quantities of students taking it. It's not required. So at the end of the day, about 27,000 kids take it every year, and that's still a lot. But in terms of, say, comparing to the SAT, where millions of kids take it, okay, it means the commercial market for workbooks and so on is a completely different scenario. And even at that, there's horrible SAT books. So at the end of the day, there's only really a few of them that have kept up to date. Some of them were good a couple years ago, but when they changed the sections, parts of it don't matter anymore and things like that. So there's things like that to deal with. Just like I produced the errata for this, many of the workbooks have lots of errata. Just things wrong, typos, you name it, that they never fix. I don't know why they can't produce an errata and stick it on their online websites and make people aware of that. They don't seem to do that. So, and then some of them are harder than others. So there's that on top of it as well. So what you want to do is, out of say the six main SHSAT workbooks out there, and this is true whether you're talking about grade 8 or grade 9, just basically pick 3. Okay? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about now. There's not really a better one. That's the problem. So what you should kind of randomly do is just pick 3 and go with it. So what you're going to have is, out of the 3 books you pick, you're talking probably another 5 to 8 practice tests within them. Okay? And some of them have drill down sections that you can get into as well. Okay? So and some of them have about 1,000 questions in them as well on top of it. So not only might they have 4 practice tests, that's 400 and 500 questions, they may have another 400, 500 questions, little quizzes that you take within a section. So, some of them, again, there's problems, but ones that seem to bubble up recently, to me personally, I don't look at every book every year, but Kaplan seems to have bumped up their game recently. I think because they do the DREAM program, and I guess they had to kind of get their act together for that. That said, the commercial Kaplan books are not the books used in the DREAM program. So, but I think the same people are involved in producing it. And they seem to have worked closer with the DOE to kind of clean up their act. So some years ago, I would not have suggested the Kaplan book. Because what some of these big prep companies do, the Princeton Review, Kaplan, Barron's, they kind of have generic books that they just kind of use as a template and a cookie presser kind of thing to just crank out and just put the name of another test on it. It's really the same book. But each test, even though there's a lot of overlap between them, there's also specifics about them. Like the SHSAT has a specific purpose. And even though it might overlap with like the ISEE, they're also distinct tests. So it doesn't mean you can't use the other to do your prep, but there's a line in the sand where you have to know to be able to distinguish that. And the average person can't do that. You have, I've been doing this SHSAT prep for like 45 years. And I can do this stuff in my sleep. So that makes a big difference. So Kaplan bumped up their game. Tutorverse bumped up their game. In fact, I just purchased the Tutorverse on Kindle, and I went through that too. Yeah, so you're using some of the Kaplan books. Last year, I was able to go through all the DREAM Kaplan books, by the way. And to be honest with you, I was impressed. Okay, I'm not saying I was impressed to the extent that they were like the greatest books ever produced in the world. But given the past history, that there was some schlocky stuff going on there, like I just said 5 minutes ago, they cleaned up their act a lot. And if you go through the Kaplan books seriously, because there's 4 DREAM books, okay, 1 is not from Kaplan, but 3 are, okay? If you go through those 4 books seriously, it actually covers a lot of information, including thousands of examples. So if you can stop everywhere you run into a problem and learn from making those teaching moments, it's not a bad deal. Because I even hear stuff about like, oh, my DREAM teacher sucks. Well, use the DREAM books then, okay? Although I think a lot of kids talk off the top of their head flippantly, you can still get something out of something even when it's not the best in the world. I don't recommend that, but if that's what the DREAM program is, that's what you got to take. Unless, I tutor in a specific way, and 99% of my kids get to school of their choice. Not even with the SHSAT. I tutor for other exams as well. I approach things methodically and conceptually. I don't make kids problem factories, but if you're understanding the topics and the purpose of the test, that's really key here, okay? And then, by the way, there's a test based on these things, right? That's kind of the way you should look at it. So as I was saying, I just downloaded the Tutorverse book on Kindle. I don't think I had seen a version of it for a couple of years. Most kids seem to feel that it's the hardest one. I didn't find that was the case. However, I found it done very professionally. Excellently worded questions. And what I think I'm going to do in the next few days is do a comparison between Kaplan versus Tutorverse versus the DOE handbook. In fact, I'm pretty sure I'm going to do that. And maybe even do a giveaway with some of those books thrown in the middle of it. Okay, so that's something to kind of look forward to as well. I keep seeing the people in the lobby is growing. Anybody have any SHSAT questions, or whether it's about registration, what's on the test, whatever the case may be, this is a good shot at doing this. That said, I'm going to start doing videos from this point. I don't mean necessarily on a daily basis, although there was points in the past where I've done it on a daily basis. So what I think I'm going to start doing is flipping into the hardest problem series and just starting with grade 7 there, grade 7 math, and then build up to grade 8, because that's the leapfrog into the SHSAT. Those are the two grades, Fanny, where the hardest questions are really the segue straight into the SHSAT. Okay, and that's pretty much the way I think I'm going to go with it. All right, so how are we doing here? Let me just see for a second. Okay, so we're just about an hour. So I'll just give this one more minute if people have questions. Otherwise, I wish everybody well. Hello again. I know there's a bunch of people again on Greg's Tutoring at GregsTutoringNYC at gmail.com. Please like, please subscribe. I love helping you guys. And again, if you run into problems, please email me. I will answer a question. I will not do your homework. I will not answer 30 questions. Use me as a resource. Remember, I'm a tutor. I have paying clients. I give my time to you guys, dozens, a whole bunch of hours on a daily basis goes to helping you guys. I understand the disenfranchised. I understand issues like that. So I'm here to kind of help you guys and guide you guys, even if it's just at a high level, at a abstract level. But if you have one problem you need solving, email it to me and I can help you. And of course, if you need tutoring, hello, I'm your guy, right? All right. All right. So it looks like nobody's asking any other questions. Anyway, thank you, the person who is speaking here, Nigana Bono. I'm sorry if I'm saying that right. It's good to meet you. Hopefully your journey is a good one. I think everybody needs to kind of calm down on this. A lot of people get excited about this, especially when you're interacting with your families and so on. Learning should be an enjoyable thing in your life. It shouldn't be stressful. And if you remain calm and start getting confident, it's a segue into where you're going to go for the rest of your life. If you want this to be stressful in just arguments with your family and people being upset, that's not a productive way to approach this. You want to be calm and confident so that on test day, you're an absolute boss. I went to Brooklyn Tech, so did my daughter. So I'm a Tech Knight all the way. It's a wonderful school. I was so happy it was still so good when my daughter went. I tutor people, but it's not the same when your own child ends up going, decades later. Of course, things changed. When I went there, they had more hands-on shop stuff. When my daughter went, now there's DDP and other things like that. So times change. I had Foundry where I actually cast metal things and other stuff like that. So that doesn't exist anymore, but it's morphed into, digital and electronic capabilities. If I'm not mistaken, even since she left, I think all students now have to take APCS, AP Computer Science. I think that's wonderful. It's moving with dynamics. What I always liked about Tech was they had the majors for your third and fourth year. It's a big school. A lot of kids are nervous about that, but they have freshman clusters and a whole bunch of other stuff, and it's something you get used to, and it's part of growing up anyway. So there you go. I'm really proud to have gone to Tech. I loved it. If I could go back again today, I would do it all over even at my age. It's a wonderful experience. On the same note, these are 8 schools out of hundreds, right? There's a whole bunch of other good schools. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world if you don't get into one of them. I know enough people from some of these schools who are absolutely brilliant and super successful for whatever successful means. I also know people who went to these schools who are utter failures, and that's just the way it goes. I have family and friends who never went to a specialized high school who are very successful, very level-headed, very content people, right? So just make this part of something you're doing. It's a goal, that's cool. It's not the only goal you need to have. A specialized high school is not the end of the world. It's not the beginning of the world. It's just part of the world, okay? And there's other good schools. There's even other so-called not good schools that are still worth going to. If you're across the street from a high school, that might be the best place for you to go. Because when you add on all the hours commuting, all the hours of extra homework, all the hours of this and that, it may not matter. It may not matter. I get to talk to a lot of families, not obviously families of my students, but also families who I just interact with. A lot of people contact me because they're concerned about their child and stuff. And there's a lot of interesting conversations that come out of these things about what is the best school for my child, right? And it's bi-directional. It's bi-directional. You have to be a good fit for the school, and the school has to be a good fit for you, plus other dynamics on top of it. Like when I went to Tech, I've told the story countless times, I lived in Rockaway. Sometimes it took me 3 hours to get to school and 3 hours to come home. I was a nerd. I was a geek. I still am. I loved it. I was passionate about it. To me, it was worth it. I would have done it for 4 hours both directions. Okay? On the same note, that's partially ridiculous. So you have to weigh things in to other things, because if I went to my local high school, I have a twin. My twin sister went to a local high school in Rockaway, which was very good high school. She was very successful, and she's as successful as I am today. Just we had different journeys and different paths. And it's, it comes down to just being as simple as that. All right? Okay. Again, if anybody has any questions about the handbook or anything else, email me. I'm going to peace out, guys. If you catch this in the replay, please like and subscribe, and put the notifications on so that you guys are going to get what I am. All right, guys, have a good night. Have a good summer, and I'll catch you guys with more streams. I'm going to start doing more again. All right? Bye-bye. Happy SHSATing.